Bingo.
And
Welcome to the Afterthoughts podcast, where we share our thoughts after stuff. And immediately today, we want to take a stand as a podcast and make it extremely clear to the world of where we stand when it comes to the college football playoff. As you can read on my shirt, we are in full support of the Texas Longhorns.
let's go.
We live in Austin.
Yep.
And we are all in on the Longhorns winning this national championship.
All
100%.
in on the Longhorns. We're the kindest podcast, if clarity is truly kindness.
Because we're clear.
Very
we are
clear.
abundantly clear about where we stand. Now, let's be clear. We are Colorado sports guys. Our teams are the Broncos.
Sure.
Of course.
The Buffs.
Of course.
The Avs, the Nuggets, the Rockies.
Yep.
Our secondary college team is the Longhorns. We moved to Austin. We planted a church here. Our kids are growing up going to their games.
Yep.
And thus,
All in.
We're all in.
I tithe instead of to the church to UT.
Okay.
And
Well,
where your treasure
probably
is,
get
there
into
your heart
that.
is.
that's actually true for a lot of people.
My heart is with the Longhorns, man.
There's some boosters who
Yeah,
do
we
more
can
than
get into that.
the University of Texas. During the pandemic, I remember a friend of ours that works for the university was like, yeah, they're like cutting budgets, but they just bought out Tom Herman's contract for $15 million. And
You're like, what we could do with $15 million as the church?
yeah.
Yeah.
We
We
could-
don't have to get into it.
You know what?
But we can.
Hook them.
Let's go.
We're rooting for the
I
Longhorns.
got a plan for it in case anybody's watching this with $15 million.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I wish you
yes.
had told me. I've got $15 million.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You don't.
We'll talk after. I'll Venmo you. I took Zeke to the last home game, Longhorns game,
Yeah.
and there was a drone show. I can send you some footage if you want to see
Let's
it.
put it up.
I've seen those on YouTube. Those are
I've never
awesome.
seen one before.
Okay.
Was it
And
crazy?
in the video, we should actually show this. Zeke turns to me and he goes, "This place is magic."
This place is magic!
And then at the end of the game, at the beginning of the year, the Big 12 commissioner threw some shade at Texas at a meeting and stuff, and went viral. They played that video at the end of the game
Did they
as they
really?
were destroying Tech.
As they should.
Yeah.
So anyway, Longhorns, we're with you. And I'll just quickly go through why we don't like the other teams. Michigan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cheating.
If I have to choose between Ohio State and Michigan, I'm always choosing
Always
Michigan.
Michigan.
Ohio State
Always
is the
Michigan.
worst. Clark Wekenman's from Michigan.
yeah.
He
We grew up
is.
cheering for Michigan.
But
Yep.
But this year, we're rooting for the Longhorns, and also they were just, it's everyone does that, sign stealing and all
Right.
that stuff, but they were so abundantly
I
clear
steal
about
signs
it.
from other podcasts, if we're just being honest.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we stole this sign.
We stole that sign?
Yeah, we
Yeah, there
did.
was-
That's
guys-
why we called this the Afterthoughts podcast.
This is a stolen podcast.
Yeah.
The Jonas Brothers were going to do an Afterthoughts podcast.
We had 20 better names, but then Ryan stole that sign.
So Michigan kind of blatantly cheated. And if they strip them of a national championship or something someday, that's just the dumbest thing, as if they didn't really win. So we just don't want to hear about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Washington Huskies. I do like Huskies as dogs.
Yeah.
Every time we see one, Zeke just casually like, "Oh, a wolf." I'm
wolf,
like,
yeah.
"Yeah, you wouldn't be so casual if,
If
that
you don't
was
like
actually a wolf."
if you don't like Huskies, turn off this podcast and never watch again.
Wow.
However,
I will say this:
That was
I've been
harsh.
paying for the Pac-12 network for years, and this will be the last year that I ever pay for it.
Yeah.
As the Buffs,
Dude, you're making
make
money.
their departure. So,
but the Buffs went to the Pac-12 championship one time in our tenure in
that's
the
right.
Pac-12, and Washington
Against-
killed us.
Yeah,
and I
that
have
was tough.
despised them ever since that moment.
What year was that?
20, I want to say 2016. Longhorns at 3, great. And Alabama.
Oh,
Who's
boy.
not tired of
boy.
Alabama?
oh boy,
James Powell loves Alabama. We've
Nehemiah
got friends. Those guys
loves
all love
Alabama.
Alabama. Pretty easy to love Alabama.
Yeah.
Nick
cool.
Saban's the commissioner
oh, wow.
of college
you can
football.
Stick by a team that wins half the time.
Yeah, woo.
Wins the
They
championship.
have 5
but yeah.
stars at every position. Must be so hard to root for them. Nick
But
Saban
we are coming
controls
up on
college
the
football.
decade anniversary of
That's
Alabama versus Auburn.
That
in
just
the
happened.
Iron
Just
Bowl.
happened.
That
Last week.
anniversary just happened. That was 10 years ago.
It was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes. Just
Kick
happened.
6.
Yep.
The kick
Yes.
6.
dude, what a great,
Sammy Davis
You're in
Jr.
there.
moment.
ran back.
Chris Davis.
Chris Davis Jr.
Sammy Davis Jr.'s
That's right.
singer. That's his.
Wait, really?
That's his brother.
I have no idea. Okay.
Sammy Davis Jr., is that a. Let's look that up.
All right.
Someone famous.
But Chris Davis
Okay.
Jr.
Chris Davis is the guy who took that to the
That's
house.
right.
You're in Auburn.
I
Yes.
War Eagle Tiger. Still don't get the eagle thing,
the
but
classic thing. Even though multiple schools have multiple mascots or sayings.
yeah, and that doesn't make sense. but-
Okay. Well, I went to Auburn, so
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
an official graduate.
Well,
But
we.
Wow.
We blame Auburn for the fact that Alabama got into the playoff because it was 4th and 31.
But you can't really
And they
blame us.
crumbled.
Like we didn't really
Yeah,
do
but
well
would
the
you
whole-
rather
whole
see UT
week.
beat Alabama in the championship?
I hope they do.
I mean, you set it
That'd
up
be
for
great.
the most satisfying
Yes,
championship
that would
ever.
be
That's
great.
it.
Alabama snakes their way into the playoff. Florida State fans everywhere are just
livid.
devastated,
So
which
livid.
is fair. That was horrible.
If anybody's got 3 extra tickets to that game, it is in Houston, the championship.
Thanks,
We can
guys.
drive there.
Please
We can
DM
drive
us.
over.
Yes, if you want to
please
sponsor
DM
the
us.
Afterthoughts host with tickets to the national championship,
We'll take a
We will
video
take
from
it.
that stadium and use
Yeah.
it on this podcast.
we could do a
Yep.
live podcast from
build the kingdom of
You
heaven.
can be
Yeah,
a
absolutely. From the
guest
stadium.
on this podcast
Okay,
if you
that
give
sounds
us those
great.
tickets.
So all that to say, hook 'em. I've got a fun little thing for you guys. You guys remember Chris Robe, pronounced Rube?
Yeah.
It's not Rube, pronounced Robe.
No, I don't know, but
No one will ever know.
he's doing every day here at Red Rocks Austin a drawing every day for an Advent drawing for a different volunteer that wins a prize every day. So I
Very
said,
fun.
Chris, you are obsessed with the Afterthoughts podcast. Your dream in your life has been to get to make an appearance on the podcast.
Yeah, he's always
Do
said
your
that.
drawing live on the Afterthoughts podcast.
Ah,
Let's see
that sounds like
today
fun.
who wins. So come on, Chris.
Let's go,
Everybody,
Chris.
welcome
Here,
Chris.
Yeah.
Thanks for wearing the long sleeves so we
Here
don't
you
have to
go.
blur
Here you
out
go,
your
buddy.
tattoos.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, welcome. Chris, tell us about what we're doing here.
Yeah, hey, so we are doing a volunteer Advent raffle. This is just to celebrate our volunteers at Red Rocks Austin, from group leaders,
Wow.
people who serve on the GBB team. We just like to celebrate everyone who makes our church happen. So,
Dude, I didn't think we would, but I did know that eventually we would get to something like this.
Wow.
Jacob, can you see Chris? Oh, Chris, just take a seat.
okay.
Chris,
Okay.
this is
Okay.
welcome to this fun adventure that we're on together. Am I doing this right? Do you want me to just hold this, or are you going to take it? What do we
You're
do?
gonna hold it. You're
Not doing it right, man.
Yeah.
It would be advantageous for you to
This
raise
is
it
my
up a
first
little.
time being a part of an Advent. I'm nervous. The Advent drawing.
Oh yeah, first time.
All right. So let's do this. Is it pretty surreal to be on this podcast right now?
surreal.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
You have been
bright.
talking about this
You're
for
living Jerry
months.
Seinfeld's dream. He recently wrote and said, "Can I get on?" And we said, "No, Chris has got to do his drawing."
What's the deal with Advent?
Let's spin this wheel.
Come on.
So here on this wheel, we're going to do
Okay.
a drum roll in a moment. We've got
you're in charge of the drum
154
roll.
names on this wheel.
You-
Let's go.
you tell me.
154 people.
154
Wow.
people are in
Dang.
this raffle.
That's
Here we
awesome.
go.
So the odds, Ryan, of someone winning this are
1 in 153. 54.
Carrie Yeager.
Hey, this is perfect because I just talked to Carrie and she was flying back from Hawaii and she was like, I caught up on the podcast. I felt like you guys were hanging out on the plane talking to me and she was very kind
Wow.
about the Afterthoughts podcast. So I'm glad she won. What does she win, Chris? Let's find out.
So
what day is it?
Carrie, December 6th, you win.
Carrie.
And really quick, before we say
spot
what you
you.
win here, Carrie, thank you for serving on the worship team.
Yes.
Thank
Go,
you for
Carrie.
being a group coach.
Yes.
Wow.
And just an incredible spiritual leader in our church. We
Carrie's
love you.
awesome. She is.
Encourager.
Oh, yeah. Thanks,
And most
Carrie.
importantly, a
Carrie
subscriber
Jer-
to the Afterthoughts podcast.
Yes.
Ryan, why don't you let
Wow.
Carrie know what you
Carrie,
won?
for your work and all of the work that you do here at Red Rocks and winning the Advent raffle, you get a $50 gift card.
Chris, tell us about where she can use that gift card.
Carrie, you can use this at Home Depot if you need any power strips. You can use this
Yeah.
at HEB if you need any bacon.
Yeah.
You can use this as a
another round trip to Hawaii on Spirit Airlines.
Spirit Airlines.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
hopefully.
Well,
Great job,
congratulations to Carrie.
Job,
Yeah.
Carrie.
Great win. Can we
Guys.
leave this here? It's kind of a nice
Yes,
Yeah.
a centerpiece, if you will.
centerpiece for Christmas.
Absolutely.
Chris, Merry Christmas.
Thank you
Great
guys.
for all you here, man.
Yeah, it is pronounced robe.
Yeah, Chris Rube, happy to have him live his dream today. The Afterthoughts podcast,
Yes.
making dreams come true every day.
Thanks, guys.
Congrats to Carrie. And speaking of people whose names start with a K, how about Kayla with some
Hey.
questions? Good to have you back,
Hey.
Kayla.
Kayla, welcome
We are so
back.
glad you're
I'm
back.
So glad to be
Yes.
back. Thank you guys.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Nice.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. Are you good?
He's still having trouble drinking liquids ever since he came back from the moon.
Oh, yeah.
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 Hey, how has that
drinking
episode
problem.
not gone viral?
Yeah,
That's the
come on,
best
guys.
episode
I
ever.
know. That was
It
cool.
will never top that.
We spent so much money on that episode.
Trillions of dollars to get Doug able to
Yeah.
broadcast from the moon.
Pluto.
We might have to. Oh my gosh.
Pluto. Yes.
All right.
I've got the time.
Well, Kayla, we're
What,
doing
is it a 2-year trip?
It's a
each
long
way?
one.
Okay, fine.
you can do that.
All right.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
free.
Miss a couple of Will's games. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
Couple grades.
What is your
years.
favorite quote from a movie and why? And can you say it?
Ooh.
Like, is it appropriate that we can say it, or is that what you're asking,
Well,
or
I don't,
can we repeat
well,
it?
Yeah,
Can you repeat it?
Do you like have it memorized?
Well, I would hope so if it's your favorite quote.
Yeah.
Wow,
Doug,
that's
Doug
a-
could do like scenes from movies.
Doug
right
could
now.
do an
Sure.
entire movie.
We don't have time.
Sure. Oh, man.
I'll start with a deep one.
Whoa.
Braveheart. Your heart is free. Have the courage to follow it.
Wow.
And I use that in so many pastoral meetings. And what I do is I remind them that when you are in a moment of worship or a moment where you are connecting with God, you will oftentimes get like little, like the Holy Spirit will speak to you in those moments. But then what happens is you go out to the parking lot and you go, nah, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to talk to that person, or I'm not going to give that, or whatever. And so I always tell them, whatever you're feeling in that moment is the truest, freest version of yourself because you're connected with your Creator. So have the courage to follow it.
Wow.
Wow, that's good.
Oh.
Went the deep route there.
You got a non-deep one?
I'm sure that'll be the answer, but I don't have mine yet. So
I
you
can,
go.
I might do deep and. Well, what does Gandalf say to Frodo?
So the answer for can you say it is no for this one.
All
So
you have
he
to.
says-
So do all who
He
live
says-
to see such times,
he
but that is
says-
not for them to decide. What is for them to decide is what to do with the time
Time
that has been given to them. Is that right, Jacob? You love that
Jacob's
quote.
favorite.
Yeah.
He also says the best. Fly, you fools. Fly, you fools.
What do you mean
One
by
of my
that?
top three.
Well,
From The Hangover in regards to the villa, is it awesome?
It's pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
Nice.
Is this the real Caesar's Palace? Like, does Caesar live here? No.
There's so many quotes from Moneyball.
Oh,
thanks, Alan.
That's what. Thanks, Alan. Is there's no reason for it to be a favorite, but it is. I like adapt or die.
Adapt or die.
Adapt or die.
adapt or die.
All right. Great job, everybody.
Thank you,
Great
Kayla.
answers.
Thank you.
Yes.
No problem. Another Moneyball quote.
No problem.
No problem.
Mr. Bean, I just want you to know I'm
I
gonna
think
be
that's in
praying
a lot
for you
of
and your
movies.
family.
No problem.
No problem.
There's another one.
That's great.
Just put that whole
That's a
movie.
great
on.
response to
Let's
anything.
show the whole movie.
Kayla, yeah, Jacob, can you just show the movie Moneyball right now? And then
That's a
we'll come
great-
back after.
That's
Yeah.
a great response to critique whenever we get it.
No problem.
No problem.
Yep.
Okay. What is one of y'all's biggest pet peeves?
Pet peeves. Wow.
Right now, I live up in Georgetown, and there's a Southwest bypass off of the highway that's kind of like a back road shortcut to our house, and the speed limit's 60. And doesn't matter the time of day, but even at 10 p.m., I'll always be behind one other person. This is like a mini highway where there's nobody else, and they'll go 45 miles an hour. Everybody drives 45 miles an hour on this back road highway where the speed limit is 60. And I'm behind them. It's every single time. I'm like, you should be going 70 on this.
Right.
If that's okay for me to say.
That's fine. It's
It's
breaking
getting
the
me
law.
going.
It's fine.
Taylor-
It's getting me
It's
going.
fine to
Taylor's
say
got
it.
you safe.
Yeah.
So, okay.
That's my pet peeve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mine is similar. Let me start by saying very thankful for everybody that coordinates the traffic lights in our city.
Wow.
That's
Way to
great.
be- way to be a diplomat about this.
Yeah,
we wouldn't know
man.
what to do without you.
Oh, you're such a man of God.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sure
When
a lot of
a-
them listen to this podcast.
When a light turns and there's no reason for it to turn, and you have to sit at a red light while the
Yes.
other way is green,
Yeah.
like
Well-
early in the morning on your way to church, for example, when
Yeah.
there's just nobody coming that way and hasn't
Yeah.
been for 5 minutes, it drives me
Let
nuts.
me remind you, in college, that situation arose in my
that's right.
car, and you guys talked me into just running the red light, and then I immediately got pulled over and got a
there was-
$250 ticket.
There was one other car. It was a cop.
It was a police officer.
Oh, you're right. That was so
That's
our
our
fault.
worst case scenario.
Yeah, I remember driving. Oh wait, no, I don't. Then you got
Sorry
a
about
One
that.
pet peeve is
$250
when your friends
ticket.
don't take accountability for their actions. That's
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
We got home 2 minutes later, and you grabbed a baseball bat and went into the backyard and just started destroying.
There was a piece of a broken fence that I.
We just had a bunch of
Anger.
crap in the backyard.
I was a different guy back then. I wasn't.
James
We
Powell.
also wasn't so chill.
We also had a
as godly
different.
as he is right now.
Yeah, sure.
We also had a house
when-
with no rules, and so
There were no
it was
rules.
fun.
Oh, that's right.
Nobody was mad at you for that.
Yeah.
We, our landlord was mad at all of us though for all of it. When it was
Ed
all said and
Diamond?
done.
Your
Yeah, yeah. I feel bad about that.
And if you're listening to this,
we
you're
are
not.
so sorry.
If somebody knows you and sends this to you, sorry about everything.
Yeah, we tried. Oh,
That was a lie.
With a traffic thing.
we didn't try.
Well, yeah, we did. When you're at a light and it turns green, and within like 2 seconds someone honks at you right away.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, people have like
Eric.
no patience.
Yeah.
But then
Yep.
if they were sitting there and they took an extra few seconds, they're like flipping you off if you honked at them. You know,
Right.
it's the hypocrisy on that.
Oh, the double standard.
Oh,
yeah, that's my pet peeve: hypocrisy. Okay.
Your pet peeve is everybody else in the world
My
and
pet
how
peeve is also
hypocritical
when
they are.
people post things and they start with, usually I don't post, but.
That's a good one.
Like, well, you're no longer the person who doesn't
Yeah.
post.
You're no
so-
longer allowed to start with that.
Yep. Great question,
Speaking
Kayla.
of-
Yeah, no
Surprises.
problem.
Yeah.
Your wife texted me. She said that you talk about that highway a lot. So
Did she just text you that?
She can
my
hear
gosh.
us. Well,
Yeah, it should be 70.
Sam, sorry you
It's
have to hear
60,
this on
which
a
is
daily
already
basis.
too slow. And
I'm
then
already
people
tired of that.
decide this is too fast, so I'm going to drive 45.
all right, we'll
Poor
move on.
Doug.
Okay, so the NFL has been doing the My Cause, My Cleats. So if you were an NFL player,
Yep.
so think of you as a star, what
Oh,
would your
easy.
cause be?
Easy for us. What would it be like to be incredible athletes? Oh,
wow.
super easy to picture.
Oh, this is a stretch.
I don't have to mention intramural championships for flag football, do I? Do we have footage of that?
What cause?
We don't?
Yeah, put that up.
Yeah, there's probably a security camera
that
at the
touchdown
corner of
pass
Kit
up.
Fields in Boulder. What cause are you passionate? Like, what are you most passionate about that you put on your cleats to represent and get people some awareness, some fundraising?
What do you got, E?
Well, I mean, to go heavy and serious and real, which you should if it's a cause, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of the point of the question.
I think
Mine's going to be a joke.
donuts. Yeah.
Take this time to make a joke, right?
Rabies.
Yeah, since you got
Rabies.
super serious about people that fix traffic lights. I mean, I think the reality of human trafficking, just nothing keeps me up at night like that. I just can't fathom it. And we've been in some places where that's happening. And so that's what I would go with.
I'd go with the Children's Hospital.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
Clean water has always been something that's drawn me.
No, us too.
Yeah, no,
No, not me.
We did that together.
I'm not really into that.
I'm against it.
I just feel like we should be at a point where we can get clean drinking water to everybody.
Waterborne illnesses, #1 killer in the world.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
every time we would try to install the water filters, Doug would try to ruin it.
Yeah,
You know, 'cause he's
he was always
anti-clean
cutting it
water.
off,
Yeah.
cutting off the
Yeah.
filter, putting it in his pocket.
Anti-clean
Can't let
water.
this happen. Like Charity Water, that organization?
Yeah.
Yeah,
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 that's
they're great.
Okay.
That's all I got.
What are
for
your
today.
causes, guys? Whoa.
Whoa.
Return serve. It's a tennis term.
Do you got
Or
one?
pickleball for the
Yeah, for
older
everybody else.
generation.
Yeah.
I think I'd also do Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
Great answer, Jake.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, I would also do the sex trafficking though.
Okay.
I think it's just
Yeah.
it's just sad,
Yeah,
It's horrific.
and it's like everywhere.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah. Well, speaking of those kinds of causes, we just got to celebrate this past weekend a bunch of cool things that our
What
church
a
has
good
gotten to do
weekend,
this year.
man.
Yes.
And if you want to go back on YouTube and hear some of those stories, this recent
You should.
sermon,
You should
the
because
joy
the
of the
message,
kingdom.
by the way, was really,
Dude, it
really
was
good.
so good.
It was
You are
awesome.
so good at giving a rundown of everything that we do in a way that hits the head and the heart. And so you
That's
kept
fun.
like jumping back and forth between those things. And you're just the perfect guy
Oh, thanks.
to do
Wow.
that. And so well
Very
done,
nice.
Ethan.
It was fun.
Not the perfect guy to do that.
No, I understand.
Yeah, no.
In context.
I know.
That's right.
I know.
And
Yeah.
context is important.
I just kept thinking all weekend and said it a few times about 5 years ago. 30 of us in a community center down the street from my house.
Yeah.
With dreams of stuff like
Yeah.
this, but who would have thought in 5 years all that's happened, and so many cool people and amazing,
Yeah.
generous, sacrificial people that are a part of this move with us, and so many fun things we get to
So
be a part
cool.
of. So
Yeah.
It
All
was
the
a
way from
blast.
stewarding $1 a day
$1 a
back
day.
in 2012. Do you remember
We were
some of
trying
those
to we were
decisions
trying
made?
to justify if we should buy eggs or not to have
Yeah.
some extra food in the morning because we got minimal breakfast.
Yes.
And because we had just started doing a workout program called Insanity.
And by the way,
every
this
morning.
was on a year-long mission trip.
We're like 9 months in. We're down to
Yeah.
about 20 pounds each.
Easy.
And we're doing 40 minutes of really intense cardio every morning.
Yeah, which is good to put weight on.
So it's like, and then we would,
Sean T.
yeah. And so the argument was, can we afford some avocados and eggs to have a little bit more? And so I love that we even made that a conversation.
Yeah.
$1 a day. And the avocados in Uganda were like
they're
this big. I
phenomenal.
picture it's like Eden avocados.
Yeah.
This big and perfect.
Oh, dude.
Perfect
So
avocados.
good.
Yeah.
There was this meal called chicamando that we
Yeah.
would eat, street food. And you'd get some
Dang it.
avocado and onion and tomato in that.
It
Can
was
we
so
see if we
good.
can import some chicamando to this show?
Yeah, for
from
next
Uganda? It was so good. Anyway, it was a really
Yeah.
fun weekend, but I wanted to keep talking church and money.
Okay.
If people
Yeah.
want to see the highlights of all the cool things this year and hear that, they can watch that.
You just triggered me.
But, oh yeah, well, get ready. Get ready. Last week we started wading into the church and money waters.
Just right there.
Just right there.
I'm out. I'm angry at
Are you okay?
guys.
What
No
can we do to
problem.
help you feel better?
I don't know.
We started wading into some conversation about church and money, and I think there's a lot of questions to be asked.
Yeah.
Revolving around how the church handles it, and some stories and some ways people have pointed things out that have divided Christians.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
so let me just start with a question I wrote down.
Okay.
Is it okay when pastors live above the poverty line? Because it feels like pastors are put into a category that you have to live differently than everybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious your guys' thoughts, because there's been a lot of extremes when it comes to this. We talked a little poverty, prosperity, gospel
Yeah.
last week, so we don't need to necessarily re-explain that too deep, but
But it is an interesting place to be. And I'm not, this isn't a pity party. We love our jobs.
yes.
But it's an interesting time. I'm sure it always has in other ways to be a pastor.
Yeah.
But right now, like the box that you're put in, where you lead an organization, but nobody goes up to the executives at any company and gives, critique or offers ideas. But if you're a pastor, all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm going to critique you. Here's ideas for the organization,
Yeah.
sort of nonstop,
Oh, yeah.
which can be good and bad. The weight of, no other sort of leadership position, people aren't looking at you your life under a microscope to make sure you're living above reproach and questioning your decisions and questioning your purchases. It's interesting because everybody's going to have a different answer for that question of how poor should pastors be?
Yeah.
Yep.
How poor, I remember, I don't know who said this. Maybe I read it in a book, but it was one of those fun sort of parable stories of this grandpa and his grandson riding into town on a donkey.
Yeah.
And the grandson's on the donkey and the grandpa's walking next to it. And then a person passes by and says, "Can you believe that little boy making that old man walk?" And so they switch places where the grandpa was on the donkey and the boy was walking. And then they passed another person that said, "Can you believe that grandpa making that little boy walk?" And so he pulled the grandson up onto the donkey, and then another person said, "That poor donkey." And that grandpa and that grandson putting, and so like you're never gonna make
Right.
everybody happy. And I think
Yes.
there's always, everybody's got a different level for how poor you should be or how much money you should have
Yeah.
in the church.
Totally.
Just in the church.
Oh, yeah.
In a different category. You're putting it, as a church,
Yeah.
you're putting a different category. In some ways you should be.
Yeah. Yep.
Because you are living a different calling.
Right.
And as a pastor, you're putting a different category than anybody else.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah.
kind of expected of you
Right.
that you kind of owe everybody.
Right.
Because you're a pastor.
Right.
And like you said, this isn't a pity party. It's just a weird life to live.
No. Yep.
I felt this past weekend. So I finished the last service and I had to try to rush out of here to go home to watch the
Yeah.
boys because Steph needed to come down here.
Yeah.
And our parking lot is a mess after the 11 a.m. But I sat in that parking lot. And over the last however many years, I've had all kinds of car situations. I drove this terrible car for all these years that was breaking down and then had this great story that I got a Jeep Wrangler.
Yeah.
And it's sweet. It's a 2010 Jeep Wrangler. So it's not like I'm driving the fanciest car in the world, but I was sitting in it thinking of people looking like, oh, there's the guy who just preached about money and he has a Jeep Wrangler. You know, like,
Yeah.
oh no, like I didn't want people
Yeah.
to see me almost. And I'm like, is it not okay that I just have like a decent, cool car that I like, that I've saved up for a decade? But I felt that.
Right.
Yeah.
If I worked any other job, I wouldn't feel that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you are super good at having a budget and using envelopes and
Right.
doing all of that. And so it's like, so I'm not allowed to be a good steward of my money now
No.
because I'm a pastor.
It's a
an
weird,
interesting
it's a
world.
weird place to live.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's so true.
But that pendulum has swung very far the other way, where there are pastors and stories where you're like, you know, and people point out of how much money and how much kind of luxury and that
Sure.
kind of life
Yep.
that you look at that and
Yep.
go, how
Something-
far is too far that way?
You're like, yeah,
'Cause
sure
then it gets
seems
kinda
like-
weird.
Yeah, it
You know?
absolutely does.
Oh, yeah.
It absolutely does.
This-
That's why you know, there's context behind every story. There's context behind every purchase. There's context behind, or there's a story behind it. I guess I should say it that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But if a pastor wears something nice,
Yeah.
people get up in arms. Let's
Yeah.
just call it what it is.
Yeah.
A few years ago, Preachers and Sneakers Instagram account blew up.
Oh, I remember.
And it was a whole lot of opinions that came in.
Yeah.
And that this isn't the only example of this.
By the way, me and Ryan were in Flight Club in New York City. We just happened to be there. Didn't even buy anything. Just stopped by. That's
make
a
sure you
store.
say that.
Oh, yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
somebody's
yeah.
gonna murder you if you
We
bought nice
just
shoes.
walked through it.
Just walked through it.
Good.
And we were
Good.
there looking at shoes when we found out about that Instagram account.
That's incredible. So there was like this great debate through the
Yeah.
whole thing, because
Right.
there
Right.
were some times where you're like, wow, that's a really expensive, like crazy amount of money for something, but that's
Right.
on everyone's personal scale. And you only put a pastor into that category. Like it's okay if you wear shoes up to this value,
Right.
but not beyond that
But
value,
not beyond
right?
that
And
value.
then you had opinions from all over the place, but it was an interesting like social experiment.
Yeah.
And sadly, I feel like we just pretty much watched how the church will immediately divide and fight each other
Yeah.
and not have healthy conversation. That was my take.
Yeah,
on
it wasn't the
Yeah.
world critiquing the church. It was
Christians.
It
It
was
was the
Christians
church,
getting
yeah.
mad at other Christians, which to me, I'll say a couple of things. Number one, there's a conversation that should be had
Yeah.
about all
Yeah,
of that stuff because
sure.
Yeah.
does it get out of hand? Absolutely. Does it need to be kept in check? Absolutely. So 100% I agree with that. I just have never, I don't think the platform of an Instagram account that sort of spotlights it and throws shade without the backstory,
Right.
Yeah.
and the comment section in the name of starting a conversation, which I think was the goal of that Instagram account. I didn't see any conversations really started. I just saw a lot of anger. I saw a lot of bitterness. I saw more reasons for people to be hurt. It's so interesting because we live in a day and age where church hurt is digitally contagious. And so you could go to a church where, faithfulness doesn't make the news, first of all.
Right.
But like you said, you watch a documentary about that church or listen to a podcast about this church, or you see a Preachers and Sneakers post about that pastor, and it fuels the fire. And I know people who just are addicted to being mad at the church,
yeah.
who just, they eat that stuff up.
Yeah.
Tell me when the next documentary is, because
Yeah.
in a weird way, the madder I am, the happier I am, because anger gives you a little bit of a dopamine hit, and it just proves your narrative right.
Yeah.
And so the conversation absolutely is very, very important. The avenue of doing it on social media, I just completely disagree with.
Yeah.
If I could go on the record saying that.
Sure. You
Even
just
though,
did.
Yep, I sure just did.
On the ultimate
You know what-
record.
you know what's
the
funny?
top podcast
I
on
have-
Spotify this year.
The top podcast. I have a few really nice pairs of shoes.
Are you serious?
I'm out.
Did I just trigger you?
I can't do this. Jacob, can we cut and restart? I didn't know. I'm sorry. But Doug has nice shoes.
They are a few pairs of shoes that would make that account.
Sure.
I didn't buy any of them. Everybody sort of knows that's one of my love languages is shoes. It's funny when you're a pastor who travels and preaches, you'll get invited to different events to speak at it.
Yeah.
And once again, no complaints here because I completely get it. But they'll give you a gift of this pair of shoes to say thank you, so they don't have to give you a check for 5 to 10 times that. And you said you're so happy, but you're like, in your mind, you're like, I'd so much rather have a check because I got bills to pay.
Yeah. Right.
We really but at the same time, I would never buy these.
Right.
And it is kind of, but I love them.
Yeah.
So thank you, and you better believe I'm gonna wear them if somebody gave them to me as a gift.
Yeah.
Regardless of what other people, I'm not gonna play my life smaller because of critics.
Yeah.
Right.
Who aren't interested in starting a conversation.
Right.
They're interested in staying mad.
Yeah.
Already bitter. And I feel like those kinds of things, I've said this before, but when it comes to healing, all of us need religion rehab and need to be healed. That kind of stuff to me is like a cul-de-sac. It's not a through street. It doesn't offer a place to go.
Yeah.
It invites you in and says, there's a conversation that needs to be had. Come in here and let's all get more and more mad and keep driving around this cul-de-sac. But there's no outlet to like, okay, let's now move on and start healing from this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no
a
solution offered.
There's an interesting comparison to outrage and pornography, where if porn is taking a beautiful gift that God created in sex and twisting it into a counterfeit version of it, that outrage is doing the same thing with conversations. Right. So God put us all here for a reason to get to know each other and to learn from each other and to learn to see each other's perspectives. And you have to do that through having life-giving conversations where you're humbly saying, I don't know everything. I would love to hear your point of view on it. Outrage is twisting that and going, I'm right, everybody else is wrong, and I have a vested interest in keeping it that way. Because to your point, when I'm angry, I feel a little bit better about my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and that's the bummer about that kind of stuff, because I do, like the guy who made that account and stuff, I'm sure that there was a heart of conversation. And
For
like,
sure.
And also like, hey, as the church, we probably need to have some accountability. And there's some things that are out of control.
Yeah.
But all that stuff really ended up doing, and all these documentaries and stuff, I think for most people that have church baggage, it just drives it deeper, and they go, see, that's why I'm not part of the church.
Yeah.
Instead of having an account that highlights a million amazing things that's happening right now that churches are doing, right there, that's the unfortunate part. It just drives people deeper into where they already are. And then pastors and people that are invested in the church just feel like there's one more thing that people are going to be mad at us about, another microscope.
One more thing
to be under.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when all that happened, it hit us hard because we have a few really close friends who are family who were posted about, and you go, you don't know what that did to them.
Right.
You don't know the consequences of that.
Yeah.
That he'll never say. And you don't know the story behind that pair of shoes.
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't know how he just loves that. And he doesn't spend hundreds of dollars a month golfing.
Right.
Or going on vacations.
Yeah.
You're allowed to do that, but you can't have this. You can't have this passion.
There's
you
not
know?
there's not an Instagram account about
Totally.
pastors who pay to send their kids to a Christian school instead of just free public school.
Right.
Right. Like it's all,
Yeah.
and obviously that's different than shoes. It's not apples to apples, but it is this unfortunate microscope that I think just crushes people and doesn't really unify or build the church. So here's a question. How do you have accountability and talk real about sometimes the church mishandles money and there's embezzlement and things that get out of hand and pastors who probably are living much larger than a pastor should? How do you go about that in a healthy way?
Because
That's a great
real.
question.
We mentioned the global missions and the unreached church and how like 1.9%,
1.7% of global missions money goes to reach the unreached.
Which is less money than the amount of money that gets embezzled in the church annually.
Yeah.
That sucks, man. And
So
I'm like, guys, there's so many reasons to be mad at the church, and there's validity to all of it. Yes, like that's the danger though of if we're gonna keep creating arenas to point it out. You have an endless amount of material.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Totally.
But also I think anybody who would put themselves in the category of my calling is to use my creativity to start the conversations and make documentaries and podcasts and to point this out. You have to be so careful with that. You have to be so careful with that. Because that's red meat for human beings who are already mad at the church.
Yeah.
And is it a through street that invites people to have the conversation and heal, or is it a cul-de-sac? What was your question? I forgot.
So what do we do?
Yeah, how do we
we
have constructive conversation? And how, I mean, because like you said,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
clearly, like the church needs that call out if that much money's being embezzled.
Well, first of all, even when it comes to like some smaller purchase questions, we talked about bigger stuff with cars last week. I have times where I've like asked you guys,
Yeah.
hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Or I'm uneasy about this. Honestly, my question has been like, my car got totaled by a hailstorm a month ago, like I said.
Yeah.
And I almost bought a Tesla Model 3
Nice.
because Elon just dropped the prices and there's like a $7,500 rebate right now. So honestly, it totals like $30K, which is cheaper than buying a used RAV4. And you don't have to pay for fuel. So you play it out over 7 years and you go, that looks like good stewardship to me. But I was scared, to be honest with you. First of all, it wasn't the right time. And I'm like, I'm going to keep driving this Chevy Cruze until
It explodes.
Let's go.
until it explodes. And I actually really
you're
love
not in
that.
it.
I actually really love that.
Totally.
And one day I'm like, I'm getting a Wrangler, I'm getting a Tesla, and I don't think there
One
should
day
be.
you'll be a billionaire like me.
One day.
Yeah.
One day.
We're going to catch up to you, man.
But there was something in me that was like, there's that stigma or the imagery thing about that pastor has a Tesla.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, this is actually better stewardship if you look at the new prices, but it's just a Tesla to people.
Yeah.
But can they see me driving that if I have a
Yeah.
Red Rocks Church sticker on the back of it?
Yeah.
But when the time comes, I will ask you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And invite you into that. And we have conversations behind closed doors with people that you trust who actually care about you living above reproach and care about you. Hey, you don't need to live a crazy lavish life. And at the same time, you don't need to play small or be poor.
Right.
Your Christians are allowed to be good with money.
Right.
In
Yeah.
fact, you should argue all Christians should be. They
God's
have
sake.
a mandate to be good at money. And sometimes most of the critique comes from people who are actually you're just bad at money.
Yeah.
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 Oh, dude. I remember when, shout out to our good friend, Chris Johnson, who's been a part of our college group for 15 years. We sat down at a sushi restaurant in Huntington Beach years ago, and he paid, don't worry. And he pointed out to me, I'd been a pastor for a couple of years, and I was very much of that mentality of like, I'm just going to give everything away, give everything away, give everything away. And he sat down with a piece of paper and showed me what investing looks like over the course of decades of making 10% return on things and how much more of a kingdom impact I can have. I'm just talking about my own personal life, personal finances, how much more of a kingdom impact I can have if I start playing the long game. And it was like a paradigm shifting moment for me. And so I think the answer is we have to have more conversations, like open-handed conversations about these things.
And do it and go to people face to face. So like that story in Acts, you might know where it is better than me, Priscilla and Aquila.
Yeah, Acts 5.
Acts 5, the couple that went to Barnabas.
You're thinking
Not
of
Ananias and
not
Sapphira.
Ananias and Sapphira.
Sorry.
Priscilla and Aquila, the married couple in
Ananias and
ministry.
Sapphira.
I thought you were going a different
They-
direction.
Yeah, dude. No.
When you miss
You were like, oh God, how am I going to clean this up after you say what you say?
pretty clear not to misuse the church's funds or lie about them in that story. So that's probably
That
gonna
one's
call
pretty
out.
intense.
There's some
Not
need for that call out.
Ananias. Yeah, not Ananias and Sapphira, Priscilla and Aquila. So Barnabas,
Different couple.
Barnabas, who was traveling with Paul for a while, was this younger, very, he was a public figure back in the day.
Yeah.
And he was going around preaching and
He was good. He had charisma.
He had charisma. He was developing a following.
Yeah.
And had a platform.
Yeah.
And this older couple, Priscilla and Aquila, watch one of his sermons and they notice something. They go, man, that was so good, but he got one thing wrong.
Yeah.
So they actually take him to dinner
Let's go.
And they probably pay for the dinner.
Yeah.
And they spend time encouraging him and building him up and then saying, hey, can we challenge you on one thing? Because we want your ministry and you to thrive even more. We think you got this one part wrong. And Barnabas, there's no record of Barnabas saying, excuse me?
Yeah.
Like, you don't even know who I am.
Yeah.
He actually receives it and says, thank you.
Yeah.
And so that's like a face-to-face. And I know there's no social media back then, but I would argue today that would look like not blasting people on social media or not challenging them in the comment section of their post or even DMing them the complete challenge, but more of like, hey, can we talk? Because I love you and I'm for you and you're doing amazing things. And there's this one thing though that I want to challenge you on. And if we could just see more of that stuff happening today.
Dude, it's so
on
good.
both sides. So you've got people who with grace can challenge you, and then you with grace can be challenged.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, how it usually feels for pastors, so to speak for pastors, is not that. It usually feels like if what they did was 80% of what you're doing is great, and I want to talk about the 20%, let's dive into it to make you better. How it usually feels is 100% of what you're doing is wrong, and you need to change. Even if that's not how you intend that DM or that email or that whatever to come across. That, and it's probably for me, it's probably my own insecurities and all of that, but that's how I usually receive it. Is this person is like drawing a line in the sand and thinking that I'm this false teacher and they're not really hearing what I'm saying. And so I just don't have time. You know what I mean? And so learning how to formulate those responses with more grace mixed in with the truth, I think could be very helpful.
And relationship is part of that too. I feel like so many people through social media now can call out a pastor or church that they have no connection to.
No.
So you're not really going to even get heard.
Yeah.
You know, you're just going to push that pastor into more of a corner somewhere and be like, I guess people on the other side of the country hate me that don't know me. They don't come to my church. They're not involved here. They don't know the heart.
Right.
But it's just a weird category that you get put in as a pastor, which to me, I think is a misunderstanding of biblical finance because I think there are some passages that get cherry picked where it's just like sell everything you have and go serve the poor. And the heart behind that is, hey, if you love money, you better open your hands with whatever you're holding on to like this. Jesus is very clear about that. Jesus also got kind of mad when they're like the Judas mentality of like, oh, that money could have been given to the poor. Why would you buy a nice gift to bring to this party? You know, like he was also like, hey, why are you playing so small with a scarcity mindset?
Right.
He was in between. He wasn't just the sell everything. There's also context to those passages.
Right.
Some of these people, he's telling them you need to sell your stuff because you're not coming back here anymore.
Yeah.
This isn't your home anymore. So it'd be smart for you to get this property sold because you're coming to live a new life and you're going to be somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Some of them loved money, and he said, this is the idol in your life that we need to knock down.
Right.
And we all need that call out.
Right.
Yeah.
But then there's also people who were successful and good stewards that made the ministry possible. A lot of women made Jesus' ministry possible, and that was in that time when they had much less opportunity. But they were bankrolling the ministry and empowered by Jesus to do so.
Yeah.
And
No,
the
that's
Bible's
really
really
good.
clear about stewardship that you actually, like, first and foremost, you're supposed to provide for your family.
Right.
And for your kids and leave an inheritance and have a legacy financially with what you do and save money and be wise with it and set yourself up and your family for the future and be generous. All of those things together. And people can hear some of that teaching and go, yeah, but not for the pastor. He needs to just live on the poverty line, right? Like you're just put into that category.
Right.
Even I was thinking about weddings. Like I'm sure you guys have officiated a good amount of weddings that you did not get paid for.
Yeah.
And if it's a friend or somebody and you're like, hey, you know, whatever. But
For sure.
I've officiated weddings where I'm like, I spend a lot of time on this. This is outside of my job, my work hours. Like this is, you know, something outside of this.
I drove 90 minutes to get here.
It's very difficult to put together a ceremony.
And this is the most important part of the
To
thing.
do it well.
And I know that DJ made a playlist, set up some speakers, and he's getting $3,000 to do that.
While he
Right.
texts
But the
his buddy.
pastor owes us because that's his job. He's a pastor, right? Like that's
Right.
kind of just the mentality surrounding it. And
Right.
obviously,
That's funny.
Never going to go
It's your
fight somebody
greatest
over
honor
it.
to serve.
You owe us, right? It's just a funny, weird place to live in.
You can
Totally,
pay us
man.
for the opportunity to serve.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But
Love weddings, by the way.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course.
It's
And
just-
Jeep Wranglers, man.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I think that a lot of people put pastors and churches into that category because they have seen the headlines and they go, how dare you guys? You know, like, and when one of those churches or one pastor makes a mistake, we all take a bullet for that. It hurts everybody because it's just a reflection on the church.
Yeah.
And to bring it back full circle, that's why I love having a weekend like we just did, getting to share all of the ways we're able to steward and give money away and open our hands as a church and be a church that does that and live with that posture and mentality. And I think that in some ways, we learned some of those lessons spending $1 together. We also learned some of those lessons have been inspired to keep going in that direction and never get close to some of the extreme things that have been called out on social media. And there's some good to that of like,
yes, for sure.
I don't ever want to be close to or smell
there's
like
a lot of good
corruption,
to learn from it.
Right?
To go, okay, maybe
A
I
ton of good.
disagree with a social media platform or a document, like the documentary being made and maybe the heart behind it, but also it wouldn't have been made if there wasn't something to point out.
Yeah, that's right.
So what can we learn and stay as far away from as possible?
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. But I love your message and what you just said because it's motivation to me for all of us to be better with money. Because the better we are with money, the bigger we think.
That's so good.
The more we leave a scarcity mindset for an abundance mindset, the more good noise that we get to make in this world.
Yeah.
The more money we get to give away. Like people, when I hear people say, or like FPU, Financial Peace University, we got like 300 to 400 people in our church who are going to start going through that in January. I think that's amazing. The one thing I would challenge them is because I think they're signing up because they want to be able to pay their bills. And what I would say to them and anybody listening is that is such a small vision for your life financially to be able to pay for your bills. You should be thinking 5 years from now, how am I paying for other people's bills?
Yeah, good.
As a church, how are we paying for other churches' mortgages? How are we funding the kingdom of God in the 1040 window with the unreached? 100 times what we're funding it now.
Yeah.
As pastors, to in our personal finances, asking the same, how do I pay for other people's bills?
Yeah.
How do I crush money so much that I can live big for the world?
Yeah.
Right.
Make
You
sure
should, like,
children's hospitals
unapologetically.
are well funded and making a
exactly.
dent in fighting against sex trafficking
And living with
all
the
of those
poverty
things, right?
mindset or being or allowing yourself, even as a pastor or a Christian or anybody, to be placed in there, having other Christians box you in, doesn't do you or anybody around you favors.
Yes. Yeah, and everyone's calling is different too. There's people that giving and generosity, and some people that are just really good at making money.
Right.
And that's part of the way that God has equipped and gifted them to build his kingdom.
Yeah.
You know, and so to put them in a different or lesser category than the person who lives in poverty for the gospel is not fair, because one's making it possible maybe by supporting the other person to go and preach the gospel somewhere living in a really hard condition. Everyone has. But the book of Acts is pretty much just that story. But what gets missed is Lydia and Priscilla and Aquila and all these people that were bankrolling the ministry.
For sure.
That were not minor characters in it.
Right.
No.
Right.
They were partners with Paul.
Huge.
They were in that with him, and they deserve just as much of we're in the credits of the story with Paul, because
the church
they made
in Philippi
so much possible.
would not have happened without Lydia.
Right.
Yeah.
And you want to know one more thing I'll say before we move on is, and I can say this about Red Rocks because it wasn't our idea, wasn't my idea. This was Sean and the guys 18 years ago when they started this whole thing. Their idea. It's written into the bylaws of Red Rocks. When you talk about how do we protect ourselves from becoming that story or that statistic, it's very normal, especially in the corporate world, where you start a company, and then as soon as your company is like purchasing real estate for the company, it's in your name. And one day when you retire
As an individual.
as an
owner,
individual, this is actually true, and I'm not bashing it because there's reasons for it. That's true for a lot of churches. You know, the credit card, like everything for pastors who are starting a church, to be able to make purchases, you have to get a credit card where you assume all the risk of the church personally.
Yeah.
And so you buy a first building or a second building, and it just goes to that pastor's name. And then one day that pastor retires or the church goes under, well, then that leader or that pastor or that executive for that company own the real estate. And I just want, and I'm not bashing that. That once again, there's very good reasons, and it makes sense how that ends up happening. All I'm saying is at Red Rocks Church, and I love this. This makes me so proud of our leaders. It's written into our bylaws from the very beginning that no leader on this staff owns any real estate at all. And so when we talk about Denver or Brussels or Austin, maybe one day purchasing real estate, the three of us aren't owning it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
And one day when we are done, whenever that is, hopefully decades from now, we retire, we don't own any of the church.
Right.
And so that's why I love that, because we can stand up in front of everybody with integrity and say, I'm praying about this question of like, God, based on all the ways you blessed me, what can I give to build your kingdom in your church and not mine? Truly knowing, God, this is your church, and it's not going to benefit me financially at all if we purchase that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's one way that this church, Red Rocks, has sort of set up that safeguard. And it wasn't my idea or ours.
Right.
And I just wanted to brag on it. And anybody who's listening, if you're asking that question, is this place for real?
Yeah.
Like, are you guys for real? Because churches are about money. Is this for real? That's just one fact I can offer you. Yeah. You know what I mean? That we set up to protect ourselves from the human temptations around money.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second thing I would say is go back and watch Ethan's message from the weekend. That's why we do what we do, where we are so transparent about where we're giving all of this money. Is it's just another way to, one, take money off of this weird pedestal that humans tend to put it on, but two, just fight back with transparency and go, hey, we're just gonna show you everything and give you everything, in the hopes that, and this is important, we can graduate from all of the bitterness and the hurt and the pain and move into the much higher calling, which is the joy of generosity. There was a electric feel in the lobby and in our church this weekend. I felt it with our staff even yesterday. And I made the point, I think I know why. I think it's because we're all being generous, and generosity is just how God created us to be. I was saying, it's like when you put your phone down for 24 hours and you feel so much better after you go through the withdrawals. And you eventually realize, oh, I think this is just like how I'm created to be. It's the same thing with generosity. It's hard to get there, but once you get there, you go, this is what I was created for.
Yeah. Well, in summary for me, I think the answer to the question of how do we go about this line of money in church and pastors and all that is, it's always going to be a tension. With the balancing statement of there needs to be conversation. There's a lot of good to that. When it comes to all the fighting and arguments and comments and social media accounts and stuff like that, I think the reality is so many people, what they know to do or what they're putting their hands to is attacking someone else's calling because they don't know their own. They don't have a confidence in their own. And I think that's ultimately what we love to invite people into, is like, hey, there's a place for that conversation, absolutely, and accountability. But I think when you get plugged into your call to build the kingdom, you're going to care a lot less about somebody else who's not doing theirs the right way in your eyes, because you're going to be too busy doing your thing. And churches need to have those conversations, and pastors should be held accountable and all that stuff. But when you don't have a confidence or an understanding of the calling in your life, it's really easy to just sit around and just attack everybody else's.
For sure.
And so the hope out of stuff like this and series like this is, hey, people open up to what Jesus has for them in the calling to build his kingdom, because then you even look at the problems and go, okay, how do we go help with the solution here versus just point it out? Because this is our family. The church is our family. And I hope more people get awakened to that for their own sake, because the kingdom needs them, you know?
So good, man.
Absolutely, man.
Well, congratulations to Carrie on winning $50 today, speaking of money. And I'm positive she will steward it well.
Probably even tithe $5 of the 50.
It's such a temptation for me to peek and see what tomorrow's prize is. It's like
Day
right
7.
here, but I'm not going to do it.
So disappointing.
I love Christmas so much.
What an illustration of a pastor not giving in to temptation.
Oh, man. It's only because I've got community.
Oh,
you guys are here.
There you go.
If I was the only one sitting at this table right now,
you might look.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. And cameras as well.
Yes.
That's true. Yes.
Well, any signing off thoughts, Kayla, Jacob, anything you guys would like to say as we wrap up the Kingdom Builders convos and go into the Christmas season?
I think it's a great series to have leading into Christmas.
Yeah.
So super cool to experience everything that the church gave, and how everybody was so generous this weekend, even with some with so little. They still were able to give, and it was just
really well said.
Really awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
for those of you who gave.
I didn't tell the story this year, but I normally do during Kingdom Builders, and I'll just finish the episode with this. Our first year of the Kingdom Builders offering. We were a young church with not a ton of people, and it was just like, hey, this is going to invest into being able to keep doing this next year, not even knowing a pandemic was coming. And in the history of this church, the offering that has meant the most to me was Julian Barney, who gave $2. He was a kid in Red Rocks Kids, and seeing that in an envelope and knowing like that, he felt that meant something to him. To give $2 is the perfect picture of the story of Jesus and the woman with the mites and all of that. It's not about the dollar amounts, it's about the way you choose to live with
about
what God has
trusting
in
God
hands.
with your money.
And we're blessed to have a lot of people with us in this journey. And
we get to lead a very generous church.
We do.
Yeah.
And we've gotten to be a part of cool things. And it's not us three. It's hundreds of people who are a part of this. So shout out to everybody from Red Rocks Austin that's a part of this with us. Shout out to Carrie. Shout out to whoever gets us tickets to the national championship.
Yes,
and shout out to
that.
you for watching the Afterthoughts podcast. Share it with your friends.
Yep.
And we'll be back for episode 18 in honor of Peyton Manning next time.
Let's go.
Wow.